The house did not cheer when Adaeze walked on stage. It held its breath, because the same room that had watched her kneel that night was now watching her rise. And every soul inside understood they had witnessed something history would not forgive. But how did they get here? That question was already on 200 lips inside the Eco Tower Grand Ballroom. So let us go back 7 hours, to the beginning of the end. Kneel, Ada, and apologize for the embarrassments. Mama Ego did not raise her voice. She did not need to. 200 guests heard every word. The chandelier above caught the diamonds at her throat, and Adaeze, in that single silent second, understood that the night had been arranged. Every candle, every guest list, every polished ribbon, all of it pointed here. On your knees, Ada. The room did not breathe. A camera drone above the balcony tilted its lens downward. Adaeze looked toward the high table. Her husband, Obinna Adebanjo, sat smiling softly beside Toke Ajayi. The other woman, no announcement needed, everyone already understood. It is not in my culture to kneel for forgiveness I have not earned, Adaeze said quietly. Mama Ego's smile sharpened. Then perhaps, she replied, you should not have married into mine. That laugh everyone recognized, brittle, performative, cruel. And in that moment, Adaeze knew two things at once. She would remember it forever, and they would regret it forever. She returned to her chair. She sat. She did not cry. She waited. What no one saw was the blue leather notebook already closed inside her purse. What no one knew was that one phone call had already been made. What no one guessed was that by midnight, Mama Ego would weep in front of God and a stranger, and Obinna would realize he'd been standing on air, held aloft by one woman he'd spent 2 decades refusing to credit. Long before the gala listings, Obinna had been a hungry man with a slipping notebook and one idea no investor wanted. He had proposed 3 times, refused, accepted, because the 3rd time, he finally learned how to listen. She introduced him to an Abuja venture capitalist in year 1. 3 more funders in Nairobi and Accra by year 2. A London diaspora investor, an old friend of her late father, by year 3. Each introduction felt magical. None of them carried Adaze's name. By the 5th anniversary, Obinna had stopped thanking her entirely. She became the quiet current beneath his increasingly visible wave. He mistook her absence from the magazine covers for absence from the work. That was his most expensive mistake. It would cost him everything in a single night, and he did not even see it approaching. 3 weeks before the summit, Adaeze found a second phone folded beneath 2 polo shirts inside Obinna's travel bag. No password. That hurt worse than secrecy. A locked phone would mean caution. An unlocked one meant disrespect. He no longer believed she had the courage to look. Toke had written messages in caps. Still dresses like she is going to teach primary school class. She's why investors leave dinners early. Obinna had replied with laughing emojis and paragraph-length cruelty disguised as jokes. But it was the group chat that ended the marriage. Mama Ego, Obinna, Toke, a planning committee for public humiliation. Mama Ego wrote, "Tonight must settle the future of this family. Force Adaeze to kneel and apologize." Toke replied in seconds, "Leave the script to me." Obinna typed, "By the end of the summit, she will finally accept where she belongs." Why? 3 conspirators, 1 agreed plan. Adaeze reread that final sentence 3 times, not because it shocked her, because it confirmed everything. This wasn't carelessness. This was a coordinated performance. Adaeze placed the phone exactly where she had found it, then opened the cedarwood box in the corner of her closet, because inside that box sat something they did not even know existed, something that would, in a few hours, rewrite the entire narrative of a man's carefully built empire. Inside lay a leather notebook, dark blue, worn at the edges, page after page, names she had connected, donors she had softened, board positions she had quietly influenced. investments arranged over kitchen tables in Surelaire at midnight, 20 years of invisible work. Halfway through, a familiar business card slipped free. Chief Adewale Lawson, founder of Lawson Continental Holdings. 22 years ago, he had been a young engineer in Yaba pitching ideas nobody wanted. Adaeze had introduced him to her uncle. One coffee, one contract. Now Lawson Continental operated in 12 African countries. Cloud platforms, civic payment infrastructure, agriculture logistics. She never asked for a thank you. Never asked for equity. Quiet people often build empires no one notices until something collapses. Adaeze closed the notebook and made one phone call. That single phone call lit a fuse no one in that ballroom could see. Not Toke, not Mama Ego, not even Obinna. They were still polishing smiles, unaware that the night had already shifted beneath their feet. Amara Okeke answered on the first ring. "I work in event production. Sleep is a myth." Adaeze said simply, "I need your help, and I need you to trust me before I explain." A pause. Then Amara answered immediately. "Okay, no questions." That was why Adaeze trusted her. The next afternoon, rain tapping against tall restaurant windows, Amara scrolled to the keynote section of the summit brochure. Her eyebrows lifted. "Oh. What?" Chief Adewale Lawson, keynote speaker, for the first time in years. Adaeze smiled faintly. Not revenge, timing. "You know him?" Amara asked carefully. "Well enough that he will recognize me." "And Obinna has no idea?" "No." Amara leaned back in her chair. "I think your husband is about to undo himself." Adaeze shrugged faintly. "He already did. He just hasn't realized it yet. And by the time he does, every apology he ever makes will be unable to undo what he set in motion the moment he agreed to that group chat." 2 nights before the summit, Mama Ego hosted a private dinner inside her Ikoyi home. Toke was there. Of course she was. Adaeze arrived in a black dress so understated it almost looked severe. Mama Ego noticed immediately. "You really refuse to put effort into your appearance." Toke smiled into her wine. Obinna sighed theatrically. "Can we get through one evening without tension?" Cruel people always resent the discomfort their cruelty creates. During dessert, Mama Ego said, "Tomorrow is important for my son's image. Try not to embarrass him by looking uncomfortable around influential people." Adaeze met her eyes. "Of course." That single quiet answer pleased Mama Ego far more than it should have. Every calm response made them more confident, and confident people stopped paying attention. That night, Adaeze photographed several notebook pages, for correction, not revenge. At midnight, she sent one secure email to the office of Chief Adewale Lawson. 3 photographs, 1 sentence. "You once told me integrity matters most when power makes cruelty easy. I think you should see what happened to yours." She turned off her phone. No tears came, only clarity. And clarity, sent at midnight, lands harder than any accusation screamed at noon. The summit night arrived wrapped in immortalized gold and expensive perfume. Photographers captured governors, executives, and influencers beneath towering chandeliers. Inside the grand ballroom, giant screens displayed Obinna's face beside the foundation logo, Visionary Leadership Award, Obinna Adebanjo. He smiled at it every time he passed. Toke adjusted his tie near the entrance. "Nervous?" "No. Tonight is basically my coronation," Obinna smirked. Across the room, Mama Ego introduced her son like royalty presenting an heir. "My son built everything from nothing." Adaeze heard that sentence while passing nearby. Built everything. Interesting. Adaeze entered the ballroom quietly. Her sapphire gown flowed simply against her frame. The coral bracelet on her wrist caught the light whenever she moved. Unlike Obinna, she remembered names, children, illnesses, dreams. That kind of reputation survives longer than charm. In one of the back corners, Amara stood watching the keynote slide rotate on the corner monitor. Calm still, but her thumb kept tapping against her phone, waiting for the moment when calm turned into something unforgettable. At 8:15 p.m., the host stepped onto the stage. Before tonight's leadership presentation, please welcome our keynote speaker. A large image appeared on screen. Chief Adewale Lawson. The room erupted. Even Obinna looked impressed. Chief Lawson entered from backstage beneath bright white lights. Tall, composed, powerful without trying. The kind of man whose presence naturally quiets rooms. He shook hands with the host. Then his eyes moved across the ballroom, searching until they found Adaeze, and stopped. Only for a second. But both Adaeze and Amara, watching from near the production booth, noticed. Recognition, then something colder. Obinna missed it. He was too busy smiling at cameras, posing for photographs he thought would be the only ones anyone remembered from that week. They would not be. Tonight is about leadership, impact, the people who shape industries and communities. The audience leaned in. Then halfway through, he stopped, barely noticeable. Forgive me. I am stepping away from my prepared speech for a moment. Confused glances. Years ago, Chief Lawson continued, I had the ideas but not yet the access. His eyes lifted toward Adaeze. There was one person who changed that. Tension moved through the room. She listened when nobody else did. She made calls nobody else cared enough to make. She opened doors quietly and never asked for credit afterward. Obinna's smile faded. Mama Ego straightened. Toke glanced between them. Some of the most influential people in this city are standing on foundations built by individuals whose names never appear on magazine covers. Silence. Absolute silence. And tonight, Chief Lawson said carefully, I was deeply disturbed to learn that one of those people had been publicly disrespected by the very family she helped build. The air changed instantly. Obinna froze, not visibly, but internally, like someone sensing danger before understanding it. What that room did not yet know was that in 30 seconds, a $40 million reputation would begin to dissolve in public, and the cause would not be scandal, but a single name spoken aloud. Many of you know Obinna Adebanjo as a visionary businessman. His image still glowed behind Chief Lawson. But very few of you know the woman whose network and credibility helped create many of those opportunities. Every eye shifted toward Adaeze. She remained perfectly still. Chief Lawson stepped away from the podium slowly. Adaeze Okonkwo. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some guests looked genuinely shocked. Others looked thoughtful. Earlier this week, my office reviewed several partnership histories. Mama Ego's face lost color. Obinna sat motionless. Toke slowly removed her hand from his arm. The giant screen behind Chief Lawson changed. A scanned notebook page appeared. Handwritten notes, names, dates, introductions. Adaze's handwriting. A ripple moved through the audience. Board introductions arranged by Adaeze Okonkwo. Slide change. Meetings coordinated by Adaeze Okonkwo. Another. Foundation relationships established through Adaeze Okonkwo. Another. Development partnerships recommended by Adaeze Okonkwo. Obinna looked physically ill, not angry, terrified. The room was no longer seeing Adaeze as weak. They were seeing him as dependent. The people who build bridges are often forgotten by those who cross them successfully. Then, from one nearby table, an older man stood, Senator Bayo Akinola. She introduced me to my first major investor. Another rose, a banker from Accra. Adaeze connected my holding company with diaspora financing. Then another, and another. She helped launch our education initiative. She arranged our hospital partnership. She brought our investors together when nobody else could. Each statement landed like another crack. Toke shifted uncomfortably. For the first time all evening, she looked embarrassed to be beside him. Mama Ego's hands tightened around her wine glass. Wealthy rooms forgive failure. They rarely forgive public exposure. The ballroom no longer belonged to Obinna. Moments earlier, they had admired him. Now they reevaluated every success story they had ever heard. Adaeze remained calm, silent, composed, unshaken. The room had begun to understand something she had known for 20 years, that very rarely is great work done by one person alone. Chief Lawson stepped away from the podium. "Would you join me for a moment?" Every head turned. Even the violinists had stopped moving. Adaeze hesitated briefly, not from fear, from exhaustion. Being finally seen after years of being ignored can feel strangely overwhelming. Slowly she walked forward. Her heels echoed against marble. Obinna watched with growing panic, not realizing that in a few minutes, the name he had tried to bury would be spoken aloud in front of every investor who had ever called him a peer. Adaeze reached the stage. Chief Lawson offered the microphone. She looked at it, then gently shook her head. "No, thank you." Soft voice, but in the silence, it carried everywhere, louder than any accusation ever could. Hundreds of faces stared back, investors, executives, board members, the same people who watched her humiliation without intervening. For one brief moment, pain finally reached her eyes, but Adaeze refused to let bitterness speak. "I don't want anyone embarrassed tonight." That sentence shattered whatever remained of Obinna's composure. Mercy from someone you tried to destroy feels unbearable. Success is rarely built alone. Most of us standing at the top were helped by someone we did not thank. The room stayed perfectly still. My grandmother told me dignity matters most when other people try to convince you to abandon it. Her fingers brushed the coral bracelet. And I believe she was right. No dramatic outburst, no screaming, no expose of the affair, no revenge theater, just truth delivered without cruelty. That frightened people more, because rage can be dismissed as emotion, but calm truth cannot. What shocked the room most was not what she said, but what she deliberately refused to say. No accusations, no names dragged through dirt, and somehow, that restraint hit harder than rage ever could have. A man near the back began clapping slowly, then another. Then an entire table stood. Within seconds, applause spread like a wave, a standing ovation, not for Obinna, for Adaeze, the same woman they had watched mocked less than 2 hours earlier. Obinna felt something inside him crack, not because Adaeze had won, because she no longer needed him to lose. That was worse, much worse. Toke stared at Adaeze with unreadable eyes, for the first time since the affair, looking uncertain, strategic, like someone suddenly realizing she had attached herself to the wrong source of power. Mama Ego panicked. She leaned toward Obinna. "Do something." Obinna swallowed. "What exactly do you want me to do?" But Mama Ego had no answer. Manipulation only works while you control the narrative. Tonight the narrative had escaped them completely, and by sunrise the entire city would know it. Near the entrance, 2 senior board members glanced repeatedly toward Obinna. One approached. "Obinna, we will need to postpone next week's partnership announcement pending review." "What?" "There are concerns regarding transparency around several business relationships." People no longer trusted him. Trust, once fractured publicly, rarely repairs. "I think this is a misunderstanding," Obinna said quickly. The board member offered a tight smile. I hope so. Then he walked away. Obinna looked desperately around the ballroom, and everywhere he turned, conversation stopped. Hours earlier, this room had celebrated him. Now it was quietly evacuating him. Across the room, Adaeze accepted a glass of water from a server. She was not celebrating, not gloating, not even looking at Obinna. Indifference from someone you once controlled feels like erasure. By midnight, the gala had technically ended. Nobody remembered the award ceremony anymore. Outside the Echo Tower, black cars disappeared one by one. Obinna sat alone, his award still on the table beside him, untouched, meaningless. Across the room, Adaeze stood near the entrance speaking softly with Chief Lawson. "You should go home," he said gently. She nodded faintly. But before she could leave, Obinna approached, slowly, carefully, like a man walking toward the ruins of his own life, unaware that the woman he once tried to erase was about to hand him the one envelope no apology could ever unseal. "You embarrassed me," Obinna said finally. Quiet, broken, Adaeze stared calmly. "No, Obinna, you embarrassed yourself." His face tightened. "I didn't know Chief Lawson would—" This was never about Chief Lawson. Her voice held steady. "It was about the fact that you stopped seeing me as human long before tonight." Cruelty rarely begins with violence. It begins when someone decides another person's dignity no longer matters. "I made mistakes," he whispered. Adaeze almost smiled sadly. "Mistakes are accidental." Silence after that sentence felt unbearable, because what he had done had never been an accident, and they both knew it. Behind Obinna, Mama Ego approached. For the first time in years she looked older, smaller. Fear had drained the arrogance from her face. "Ada, surely we can discuss this privately." Adaeze turned toward her. Mama Ego stopped. No anger in Adaze's eyes, only distance. "You taught your son kindness was weakness. Now both of you are shocked people no longer trust him." Some truths arrive too late to fix anything. Mama Ego's eyes filled instantly, not because Adaeze had shouted, but because she had not needed to. Distance is terrifying when you finally realize access to someone was a privilege, not a right. Adaeze reached into her purse calmly, then handed him a thick envelope. "What is this?" "Divorce papers." The words landed softly. They shattered him completely. "You already filed?" 3 days ago. 3 days. She had already emotionally left before the summit even began. "You really want to walk away from everything?" Adaeze looked at him gently, then gave the most devastating answer of all. "I already did." Heavy silence. Chandeliers dimmed one section at a time. The night was ending, and so was the life he had always assumed would remain waiting for him. Adaeze turned toward Chief Lawson and Amara. "I am ready to go." Obinna panicked. "Ada, wait." She paused. For one dangerous second, hope flickered inside him. She no longer loved him enough to hate him. "I truly hope you both become better people someday." No revenge, not cruelty, just honest disappointment. Then she walked away. This time she never looked back, and the room understood in that single second that what they had just witnessed would be the only story anyone told in Lagos for weeks. The fallout arrived quietly. Within days, 2 development partners suspended negotiations. One investor requested a full internal review. A charity board quietly removed him. Affairs were common. Humiliation was not. Once influential people realized how much of his network originated through Adaze's credibility, something fundamental changed. They no longer trusted the man beneath the polish. Toke vanished by morning. 6 weeks later, she was photographed at dinner in Dubai beside a Benin-born oil executive. Reputations built on image collapse quickly once character becomes visible. 3 months later, on a quiet morning, Adaeze sat on the porch of a smaller home her family had held for 2 generations. Tea beside her, the coral and silver bracelet still circling her wrist, and a new leather notebook on the table. Empty pages, new beginnings. Her phone buzzed softly, a message from Chief Adewale Lawson. The board officially approved your advisory position this morning. Below it, one final line. This should have happened years ago. Adaeze stared at the message for a long time, and though she no longer wished him harm, she allowed herself one quiet, private smile. Because being finally seen correctly after years of being overlooked can feel almost unbearable in its gentleness. Across the city, Obinna lived alone in a luxury apartment that never felt like home. Sometimes late at night he scrolled through old photographs. He always stopped at the same one. Adaeze beneath chandelier light at the summit. Calm, composed, unbroken, while the entire room rose to its feet around her. In every version of the memory he wanted to go back, to stop himself, to choose differently. But some moments reveal truth too completely for apologies to repair afterward. Perhaps the real punishment was never losing Adaeze. It was finally understanding her value when she no longer belonged to him at all. Sometimes the quietest person in the room isn't weak. Sometimes they are the foundation holding everything together. And when people mistake patience for powerlessness, they often realize their mistake only after the structure collapses beneath them. Obinna tried to humiliate Adaeze publicly. Instead, he exposed how much of his world had been standing on her unseen strength all along. And in the end, she never needed revenge. The truth did everything for her.